I was excited for my daughter-in-law's wedding, until I overheard my family planning to use me as a nanny for 15 kids instead of a guest. In that moment, I realized my place in their eyes. So on the wedding day, I quietly changed my plans and shocked everyone. Before we continue, my heart honestly sank when I realized that nearly 98% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. If this story made you feel even a little something, please consider subscribing. It's just one click for you, but it truly means the world to me and helps me keep sharing these stories with you. I was 72 years old when I finally understood the truth about my place in my family. Not because anyone sat me down and explained it honestly, but because I overheard a conversation that stripped away every comforting lie I had told myself for years. I had raised my children with love, buried my husband with dignity, and spent decades putting everyone else's needs before my own. Yet somehow, I was still invisible, useful, but invisible. It was 3 weeks before my son Marco's wedding. Viviana, his fiancée, had called that morning asking me to come over early to help taste a few dishes. I agreed without hesitation, as I always did. I bought groceries on the way, paid with my own money, and reminded myself that helping family was a privilege, not a burden. That's what I always told myself. When I arrived, the front door was unlocked. I stepped inside quietly, my purse on my shoulder, grocery bags in my hands. Voices carried from the dining room, Marco's, Viviana's, and others I didn't immediately recognize. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name. So we'll just have Intella watch the kids, Viviana said casually. I stopped walking. How many kids are we talking about? A woman asked. Viviana laughed. Between my cousins and Marco's side, 14, maybe 15. My heart skipped. 15 children. And she's okay with that. Someone else asked. Marco answered without hesitation. She's retired. What else does she have to do? She's great with kids. She'll manage. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger yet, something colder. Familiar. She can also keep an eye on the buffet. Viviana continued. I don't want to hire extra staff. Mom and Tella always says family helps family. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. No one had asked me. No one planned to ask me. They had already decided. I wasn't invited to the wedding as Marco's mother. I was assigned a role. Unpaid nanny. Backup caterer. Silent support. Someone chuckled. She won't say no. Marco laughed softly. She never does. That sentence shattered something inside me. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't confront them. I quietly set the grocery bags down by the door, turned around, and walked back outside. I sat in my car for several minutes, without starting the engine, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, from weakness, from realization. For years I had confused being needed with being loved. I drove home in silence, replaying memories I had always brushed aside. Every holiday meal I cooked alone. Every weekend I canceled plans because they needed help. Every time I told myself, this is what mothers do, I had convinced myself that appreciation didn't need words. But appreciation doesn't sound like, she'll manage. That evening, Marco called. Mom, did you stop by earlier? Viviana thought she heard the door. Yes, I replied calmly. Oh, you left fast. Yes. A pause. Everything okay? I looked around my quiet living room, my space, my life, and felt something new. Clarity. We'll talk later, I said. After I hung up, I made a decision that terrified me and freed me at the same time. I would not attend that wedding, not as a nanny, not as unpaid help, and not as a woman who had to earn basic respect. If they believed my absence wouldn't matter, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The morning after I decided not to attend the wedding, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that felt unfamiliar. I had always been the woman who fixed things, who smoothed over discomfort, who sacrificed quietly so others could remain comfortable. Choosing not to go felt unnatural, almost selfish, yet beneath that guilt was something stronger, relief. I spent the day doing nothing extraordinary. I watered my plants, read a few chapters of a novel I'd abandoned months earlier, and cooked a simple meal just for myself. No rushing, no phone calls asking me to quickly help. For the first time in a long while, my time belonged to me. That peace didn't last. Marco called that evening. Mom, we need to talk about the wedding. Yes, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. There's been some confusion. He said carefully. Viviana told me you seemed upset yesterday. I wasn't upset. I corrected him. I was aware. Silence filled the line. Aware of what? Off the plan for me to watch 15 children and manage food without anyone asking me. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, it's not like that. We just assumed. That's the problem, Marco, I said quietly. You assumed. He sighed. You always help. We thought you'd be happy to be involved. Involved, I repeated. Or used. That's not fair, isn't it? I asked. Did you ever plan to ask me if I wanted that responsibility on your wedding day? He didn't answer. I'm 72, I continued. I wanted to attend your wedding as your mother, not as hired help without pay or consent. You could have said no, Marco said defensively. You never gave me the chance. He grew quiet. Viviana didn't mean anything by it. She meant convenience, I replied. And so did you. The conversation ended awkwardly, with no resolution. After hanging up, I felt the old urge to call back and apologize just to ease the tension. Instead, I sat with the discomfort. Growth, I realized, doesn't feel gentle at first. 2 days later, Viviana texted me.
Hi, Mom and Tella.
Can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. We can talk after the wedding, I wrote. The response came almost immediately. Why after? This is stressing Marco out. I typed slowly, because I won't be attending. Several minutes passed. Then my phone rang. I didn't answer. The next few days were filled with whispers I wasn't meant to hear but did anyway. My sister-in-law called to check on me, carefully hinting that weddings were stressful and young couples needed support. A cousin messaged asking if I was feeling well enough to attend. No one asked why I was hurt. They only asked if I would fall back into place. The pressure built quietly. The night before the wedding, Marco came to my house unannounced. He looked exhausted, his tie loose, dark circles under his eyes. Mom, he said, standing in my doorway, please come tomorrow. We need you. You want me? I corrected him. Not need me. We can't manage everything without you. And that, I said gently, is exactly why I'm not going. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You're really serious.
Yes?
What am I supposed to tell people? The truth? I said. That your mother chose dignity over convenience. He left shortly after, angry and confused. I locked the door behind him, my heart pounding. I knew there would be consequences. I also knew something had shifted forever. The wedding day arrived quietly for me. No dress, no chaos, just silence and strength. And somewhere across town, they were finally learning what my absence truly meant. The morning of the wedding arrived without fanfare. No early alarm, no frantic phone calls, no rushing to prepare food or iron clothes for someone else. I woke naturally as sunlight filtered through my curtains, and for a brief moment, I forgot what day it was. Then I remembered, and instead of dread, I felt calm. I made myself coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the quiet. This was the first family wedding I had missed in my entire life. In the past, my role had always been the same: organizer, fixer, emotional anchor. Today, I was simply Antella, a woman who had finally chosen herself. Around 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A message from my cousin Rosa. Are you on your way? People are asking where you are. I didn't reply. An hour later, another message arrived, this time from Marco's aunt. Viviana is stressed. The kids are everywhere. Can you come for a few hours at least? I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. So the plan had collapsed already. The 15 children they had casually assigned to me were now running free. And suddenly my presence was urgently required. Not wanted, required. I typed a single sentence. I'm not available today. The phone rang almost immediately. I let it ring. At noon, Marco called again. I answered this time. Mom, he said, his voice tight, this is chaos. We don't know what to do. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, and I meant it. But sympathy did not mean surrender. Can you please come, just until the ceremony starts? And then what? I asked calmly. Stay for the reception. Watch the kids during the speeches. Miss everything meaningful. Silence. We made a mistake, he said finally. Yes, I agreed. You did. The line went dead. I spent the afternoon doing something radical. I enjoyed myself. I took a walk in the park, bought a pastry from a small bakery I loved, and sat on a bench watching families pass by. I noticed how many grandmothers were laughing, holding hands with their partners, being present as guests, not workers. I wondered when I had stopped expecting the same for myself. Later that evening, photos began appearing on social media. The ceremony had been delayed. The buffet looked sparse. Children appeared in the background of nearly every picture, unsupervised and restless. I felt no satisfaction in this, only confirmation. Around 9 that night, There was a knock at my door. It was Marco. He looked broken. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, defeated. "Come in," I said softly. He sat on the sofa, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "I didn't realize how much you did," he admitted. "Everything fell apart. I wasn't trying to punish you," I said. "I was protecting myself." "I know that now," he whispered. "Viviana is furious, not at you. At me. She said we treated you like staff." I nodded. "Because you did." He looked up, tears finally spilling. "I failed you as a son." That hurt more than anything else he could have said. "I raised you better than this," I replied gently, "but adulthood means unlearning bad habits too." He stayed for an hour. We didn't argue. We didn't resolve everything. But for the first time in years, we spoke honestly, not as mother and dependent, but as two adults facing consequences. When he left, I sat alone again. The wedding was over. The illusion was gone. And although the fallout had only just begun, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never allow myself to be invisible again. The morning after the wedding fiasco, Marco called. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. "Mom, can we talk?" Viviana and I realized we went too far. I didn't answer immediately. My coffee had gone cold on the counter, and I was enjoying the rare moment of calm in my house. I finally replied, "I'm listening." We want to make things right," he continued. "We understand now that asking you to watch 15 kids without asking if you wanted to help was wrong. We were thoughtless, immature." I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. "You know, Marco, respect isn't something you can demand with apologies after the fact. It has to be consistent." "I know," he said quietly, "and I want to try. Viviana wants to talk to you, if that's okay." I paused. Part of me hesitated, remembering how often talks had turned into tasks. But another part, the part that still wanted connection with my son, said yes. "All right, tomorrow then, but on my terms. You both have to be honest, and no guilt trips, no excuses," he promised. The next day, Viviana arrived precisely at 4. She looked nervous, yet genuine, dressed simply in jeans and a blouse, her makeup minimal. Gone was the polished, perfectionist exterior she often displayed. Her vulnerability was palpable, and I noticed how tense she seemed, as though bracing for a storm. "Hello, Mrs. Entella," she said softly. "Thank you for seeing me." "Come in, Viviana. Sit wherever you like," I replied. She perched on the edge of the sofa, as if ready to bolt, and I settled into my armchair. A long silence passed before she spoke. I don't know how to start." "Start wherever you feel comfortable," I encouraged. She took a deep breath. "I want to apologize for everything. For what I said about you, for how I treated you. It was cruel, unfair, and uncalled for? And why did you do it?" I asked quietly, wanting to understand, not judge. Viviana's eyes dropped. "Because I'm 26 and I never had a mother-in-law before. My mom died when I was 15, and my stepmother, she didn't like me. So I didn't know how to handle having another mother figure in my life. And instead of accepting you, I tried to push you away." Her words were honest and raw. She continued, voice barely above a whisper. "I felt intimidated by you. You were so confident, so loved by everyone, and I felt small. I made mistakes to make myself feel bigger. I thought it would protect me." I listened, letting the weight of her confession settle. "Acknowledging your mistakes is the first step, Viviana. But actions speak louder than words." She nodded, tears glistening. "I know. I want to change. I don't want to be the person who treats the woman I'm supposed to respect like a servant. Do you understand, though?" I asked gently. "That my trust has to be earned again, not just with words." "Yes, Mrs. Entella. I understand. I want to prove it." I looked at her and realized how much of this was growth, not just for her, but for all of us. For years, I had been trapped in the role of caretaker, overlooked and undervalued. Now, the possibility existed for something different: mutual respect, honesty, and family connection without exploitation. "Then we start small," I said. "We'll see if this change lasts beyond apologies." She nodded, relief and hope mingling on her face. For the first time, I felt the potential for a real relationship, not as mother, in-law and daughter, in-law assigned by circumstance, but as adults who could choose how to respect and love each other. When Viviana left, I felt a cautious optimism, the kind that comes from knowing that the first cracks in a wall have finally begun to form. And although the wedding disaster was still fresh in our minds, it had become a turning point chance to rebuild with clarity, boundaries, and dignity. Tomorrow, the real test would come living out this new understanding, day by day, action by action. For now, though, I allowed myself to sit quietly, savoring the rare, profound peace of knowing that the fight for my dignity had not been in vain. The days following Viviana's visit were strangely calm. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz constantly with requests, demands, or last-minute emergencies. Marco and Viviana were giving me space, real space, not the fake kind where I was always expected to respond immediately. It felt liberating. For the first time, I could sip my morning coffee without thinking, how long before someone calls needing something? I could sit in my garden and actually enjoy the roses, instead of worrying about whether I was on call for the entire household. 3 days after Viviana's apology, Marco called again. His tone was careful, almost hesitant, but different than before. Mom, Viviana and I were talking, would you like to have dinner with us this Sunday? No chores, no favors, just dinner. We want you as our guest. I paused, suspicious. Just dinner. No setup, no cleaning, no babysitting. Absolutely, Marco said firmly. We want to spend time with you as family. Viviana will cook. I considered it. Part of me feared another hidden expectation, another obligation masquerading as an invitation. But I had already seen hints of real change. I agreed. Sunday arrived, and I brought only a bottle of wine, because I wanted to, not because they asked. Viviana opened the door, nervous but smiling. Mrs. Antella, I'm so glad you came. Please come in. The table was set elegantly but simply, 3 seats arranged to make me feel included. I could smell the roasted chicken and vegetables. What are you making? I asked. Roasted chicken with vegetables. I followed an online recipe, but I hope it's okay, she said. It smells wonderful, I replied. Dinner was normal, really normal. No requests for help, no implicit obligations. We talked about my week, books I was reading, news stories, hobbies. Viviana seemed to be genuinely curious about my life, not the house, not my energy, not my labor. After dinner, she served dessert, a store-bought cake, neatly decorated. Mrs. Antella, she said, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you meet Marco's dad? What was your life like before us? Her curiosity was sincere, not strategic. I found myself telling her about college, the early years with Roberto, the first time I held Marco as a baby, our struggles, our triumphs, the love we built. She listened, wide-eyed, absorbing every detail like she was connecting dots in a puzzle she hadn't realized she had. Sounds like you were really happy, Viviana said softly. We were, I said. And the secret? Choosing love over pride, every single day. Marco chimed in. Dad always said Mom was his best friend. And she was mine too. Viviana's eyes glistened. I think I understand now why I felt so lost. I treated you like a task instead of a person, and I hurt you. I can see that you understand, Viviana, I said, but understanding isn't enough. I need to see it in action. I will, she promised. Every day I'll prove it. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine hope for our relationship. It wasn't about forcing apologies or playing roles anymore. It was about choice, mutual respect, honesty, and recognition of each other's boundaries. After coffee, as I prepared to leave, Viviana asked, would you like to join us for lunch next Saturday? There's a new restaurant I want to try, and I'd love your company. Just lunch? I asked cautiously. Yes, no tasks, just us. I smiled for the first time in weeks, feeling warmth fill the room. I'd love that. Walking home, I reflected on how drastically things had shifted. The wedding fiasco had been painful, yes, but necessary. It had cracked open a space for change, teaching my family what respect truly meant, and more importantly, what it looked like when I refused to be used. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a caretaker, not as an employee, not as an invisible force holding everything together, but as a person, a mother, a woman with dignity intact. The real work had just begun, but I was ready to see it through, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where family meant respect first, and love second, naturally following. The seeds had been planted. Now, it was time to nurture them. The following week confirmed that the change in Marco and Viviana wasn't temporary. Calls came, but they were different now. Gentle check-ins, casual updates, and even a few jokes about everyday life. For the first time in years, I felt like I was interacting with family members who genuinely wanted to share time with me, not take advantage of me. One evening, midweek, Marco called. Mom, I have something to tell you. I got a promotion at work today. That's wonderful, son. Congratulations. How are you going to celebrate? Well, Marco replied, a hint of excitement in his voice. Viviana wants to take me out for dinner Friday night. She asked if you'd like to join us. No chores, no responsibilities, just a dinner. I felt a warmth in my chest. This was a real invitation, a simple gesture that said, we value you, not just your help. I accepted, cautiously optimistic. Friday evening arrived, and Viviana greeted me at the door, smiling nervously. Mrs. Entella, I'm so glad you came. Please, come in. The house smelled amazing. Viviana had prepared a homemade meal, and the table was elegantly set. There was no underlying expectation, no hidden obligations, just a meal shared among family. We sat and talked, genuinely connecting for the first time in months. I learned about Viviana's recent work projects, her plans for a small home renovation, and even her secret love for baking. Marco shared stories about his new responsibilities at work and the challenges he faced. For once, our conversation flowed naturally, without me constantly being pulled into labor or problem solving. After dinner, Viviana served dessert, a simple but beautiful cake she had made. Mrs. Antella, she said softly, I want to thank you for your patience and for giving us the chance to change. It means a lot. I smiled. I'm grateful you're both making the effort. But remember, I need to see consistency. Words are easy, actions matter more. Viviana nodded. I understand, and I'll show it every day. After coffee, as I was preparing to leave, Viviana asked, would you like to join us for lunch next Saturday at that new cafe downtown? Just lunch. No tasks, no responsibilities. I asked cautiously. Yes, just us, she assured me. We want to spend time with you, not use you. I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. I'd love that. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, the dynamics continued to improve. Marco and Viviana didn't call asking for favors or assuming my availability. They included me in their plans, consulted me when they genuinely wanted my opinion, and gave me the space to say no without guilt. One afternoon, Viviana came over for tea, and we talked for hours. For the first time, I saw her not as the brash, demanding daughter-in-law I had known, but as a young woman navigating complex emotions and insecurities. She admitted she had been defensive, feeling threatened by my presence and my relationship with Marco. Her honesty and vulnerability were refreshing and allowed me to see her in a new light. I never wanted to hurt you, she confessed. I just didn't know how to handle having a mother figure again. I thought I had to compete for Marco's attention. Viviana's words resonated with me. I realized that our conflict wasn't about dislike. It was about insecurity, misunderstanding, and unspoken expectations. Recognizing this allowed me to soften my approach while maintaining my boundaries. A week later, Marco and Viviana invited me to help with something small, a weekend brunch for close friends. This time, I wasn't expected to organize or lead. They had handled everything. They just wanted my input on the table setup. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a huge victory. I was finally being treated as a valued family member, not as a servant. As I left their house that day, I felt a mix of relief and cautious optimism. The road ahead wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard, but for the first time in years, I truly believed we could have a healthy, respectful relationship. And in that moment, I realized that my decision to stand firm at the wedding had not only protected my dignity, but had paved the way for a stronger, more honest connection with my family. The next challenge would come soon, Viviana's birthday. Marco had hinted at a small celebration, and I wondered whether the old dynamics would creep back in. But for now, I allowed myself to enjoy the calm, knowing that progress, however slow, was real, and that respect, once demanded, could finally take root. Viviana's birthday arrived on a crisp Saturday morning. I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as I prepared to help with the decorations. Unlike previous events, Marco had done most of the groundwork himself. The venue was booked, the invitations sent, and the caterer confirmed. My role was advisory, offer ideas, give input, and enjoy the process. No assumptions, no guilt, no last-minute demands. When I arrived at Marco and Viviana's home, Marco greeted me at the door with a warm smile. Mom, thank you for coming. I know this isn't your usual responsibility, and I appreciate it. I'm happy to help, son, I replied, stepping inside. The backyard was already bustling with preparations. Balloons tied, tables arranged, and a small stage set for the band Viviana had hired. Viviana appeared moments later, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. Mrs. Entella, you're here, she exclaimed, giving me a quick hug. I'm so glad you could help. We spent the morning arranging decorations, choosing flower placements, and perfecting the balloon garlands. Marco handled heavy lifting and logistics, checking with the caterer and coordinating with the DJ. It was a team effort. There was laughter, easy conversation, and no tension. For the first time in years, I felt like part of a functioning, respectful family unit rather than a person being used to solve problems. As we hung the last string of lights, Marco stepped back and admired our work. This looks amazing. Viviana is going to love it. She will, I said, smiling. And more importantly, she'll know that everyone involved actually enjoys being here, not just fulfilling obligations. Viviana looked around, her eyes brimming with tears. I can't believe you both put so much effort into this. It's beautiful. The party began in the afternoon. Guests started arriving, and Viviana's friends were immediately impressed by the decorations.
Wow, this is gorgeous!
One exclaimed. Viviana smiled proudly. I had some help from Mrs. Antella, she said. She has a natural talent for design. I felt a warm glow as the credit went to me, not stolen, not diminished. Throughout the event, I observed how Marco and Viviana interacted with me. They included me in conversations, asked my opinions, and treated me as an equal, not as someone to command or rely upon for labor. They introduced me proudly as Marco's mother, not as the helper. It was subtle, but it spoke volumes about how our relationship had changed. Later in the evening, Viviana came over with a slice of cake. Mrs. Antella, can I ask you something personal? Of course, I replied, intrigued. I want to know, how did you stay so strong? At the wedding, when everyone expected you to step in and take care of 15 children, how did you manage to say no and keep your dignity? I paused for a moment. Well, it wasn't easy. I felt guilty, yes, but I also knew that if I didn't set boundaries, I would be taken advantage of for the rest of my life. Saying no was not just about the wedding. It was about respecting myself. It was about teaching my family what dignity looks like. Viviana nodded thoughtfully. I understand now. I see that respect isn't just about following rules. It's about recognizing each other's limits and valuing one another. The evening continued smoothly. Marco and Viviana coordinated with the caterers and band, ensuring everything ran perfectly. They didn't need me to oversee or manage anything. They genuinely wanted my input and company. I even managed to sneak in a few stories about family traditions, which sparked laughter and nostalgia among the guests. By the time the party ended, I felt a profound sense of relief. The day had gone better than I could have imagined. There was genuine joy, laughter, and connection. Marco and Viviana's efforts had transformed what could have been a stressful, exhausting experience into a celebration of family, respect, and collaboration. On my drive home that night, I reflected on the journey we'd taken, from being expected to serve at the wedding as if I were invisible, to now being valued and included in every decision. The transformation was remarkable. It wasn't perfect, and I knew there would be moments that tested our boundaries again, but the foundation had been laid. For the first time in years, I felt like my voice mattered, my time mattered, and my presence was appreciated, not because of obligation, but because of love and respect. I realized that true family relationships aren't built on convenience or duty. They're built on mutual understanding, effort, and the courage to stand up for oneself while remaining open to connection. That night, as I placed my keys on the table and settled in for a quiet evening, I smiled. Change had happened. Respect had been earned. And slowly but surely, our family was learning how to function not just as relatives, but as a community of care, trust, and genuine affection. The road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time, I felt hopeful about our future, and proud that I had chosen dignity over obligation. The days following Viviana's birthday party were quiet, but filled with subtle, meaningful changes. Marco and Viviana had learned a new rhythm in their interactions with me. They no longer called or texted assuming I was immediately available. Instead, they asked, they included, and they respected my boundaries. Even small gestures, like sending a thank you text for advice or asking my opinion without demanding action, made me feel seen and valued. One Wednesday afternoon, Marco called. Mom, I have a favor to ask. It's small, I promise, but I wanted your input before confirming anything. I paused, pleasantly surprised. Go ahead, son. Well, Viviana wants to host a small dinner for her colleagues at our place next month. She asked if we could set up some decoration ideas. I thought you might have some suggestions. Just your opinion, nothing more. That's different. I said, feeling a warmth in my chest. I can certainly offer ideas. Thanks, Mom. And if at any point it feels like too much, just let us know. No pressure, okay? Marco's tone was careful, respectful. No pressure at all. I reassured him. I realized that this small conversation carried a huge weight. They had learned that my time and energy were not endless resources to be drawn from, but something to respect. The dynamic between us was shifting, slowly but deliberately, toward a healthier, more balanced family relationship. Over the next 2 weeks, I began noticing even more subtle signs of change. Viviana asked about my day, not to manipulate or delegate, but out of genuine curiosity. Marco shared his work triumphs and frustrations, sometimes asking for advice but never assuming compliance. The difference was in the intent. They wanted connection, not convenience. One Saturday, Viviana invited me to join her for a cooking session. I want to learn some of your recipes, Mom, she said. Not for an event or a wedding, just for myself. I thought it could be fun. I smiled, touched by the simplicity and sincerity of her request. I'd love that, I replied. It's nice to cook without any pressure or expectations. In her kitchen, we laughed over chopped vegetables, swapped stories about our childhoods, and shared memories of meals that had shaped us. It wasn't a lesson, a test, or a chore. It was a genuine connection. For the first time, I felt like a mentor and a friend, not a server or a stopgap solution. That evening after dinner, Marco joined us. Mom, I just wanted to say thank you, he said quietly, for everything. For standing up, for teaching us, for being patient while we learned the hard way. You're welcome, son, I said softly, feeling a lump in my throat. I wanted us to have a real family, and I knew it wouldn't happen if I just went along with being used. Viviana reached over and took my hand. We're learning, Mom. It's not perfect yet, but we're trying, and I want you to know I appreciate you more than I can say. A few days later, Marco and Viviana surprised me with tickets to a theater show. We thought it would be nice to go together, just for fun, Marco said. No responsibilities, no expectations, just us enjoying the evening. The show was delightful. I watched Viviana's face light up during the performance, and Marco laughed freely beside me. There were no assignments, no chores, no hidden agendas. It was simple, pure joyful. I realized that moments like these, moments where we could exist as family without transactional expectations, were what I had been missing for years. Later that night, I reflected on the journey so far. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments of anger, hurt, and frustration, but the transformation was undeniable. Marco and Viviana were learning that respect and consideration weren't optional. They were essential. And in return, they were receiving the warmth, wisdom, and love I had to offer. I also noticed my own growth. I was no longer reactive or resentful. I had learned to trust slowly, to set boundaries, and to accept love on my terms. The wedding crisis, which had once felt like a humiliation, now seemed like the catalyst that finally reshaped our family dynamics. 2 months after the birthday party, Viviana approached me with another request, not for service, but for guidance. Mrs. Intella, I want to host a small gathering for my friends, something casual. Could I ask your opinion on the menu and setting? I smiled. Of course, Viviana. I'd be happy to help. We spent the afternoon planning together, laughing and sharing memories. The shift in our relationship was palpable. What had once been a minefield of obligations and resentment had transformed into a partnership based on mutual respect and affection. That night, as I returned home, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The long, painful lessons, the standing firm against unfair expectations, and the courage to say no had yielded something priceless. A family that valued each other genuinely, and a life filled with dignity, joy, and authentic connection. It was in these quiet, ordinary moments that I realized true transformation isn't dramatic. It's consistent. It's in the way people ask instead of assume, in the way love is expressed without expectation, and in the small, daily acts of respect that build lasting trust. I went to bed that night feeling hopeful. The road ahead would have challenges, as all families do, but I knew we had laid the foundation for a new kind of relationship, one rooted in understanding, communication, and sincere care. And that, I thought, was the most precious gift of all. A few weeks later, Viviana called to invite me over for an afternoon tea. Mom, I thought it could be nice for us to sit down, just the two of us, and chat. No errands, no expectations, just time together. I felt a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I'd love that, Viviana. What time should I come? At 3:00 p.m. sharp, I arrived at their home. Viviana greeted me at the door with a genuine smile. No makeup, casual clothing, completely relaxed. She led me to the living room where a small table was set with tea, scones, and fresh fruit. The atmosphere was calm, inviting, and free of tension. "Thank you for coming, Mom," Viviana said as we sat down. "I wanted this to be different. I want us to really get to know each other, without any distractions or expectations." I nodded. "I appreciate that, Viviana. I've wanted a genuine relationship with you for a long time. Let's take our time." We spent the next hour talking about everything, from childhood memories to favorite books, from dreams we had never pursued to small daily joys. For the first time, Viviana seemed genuinely open, not performing for me or Marco, not trying to prove anything. It was refreshing and heartfelt. At one point, Viviana hesitated, then asked softly, "Mom, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," I replied, curious but patient. "I want to understand more about your life before Marco. What made you who you are today?" I realize I've never really asked because I was always focused on my own insecurities and the tension between us. I smiled. "Well, there's a lot to share, but let me start with something simple. My childhood wasn't perfect, but my parents taught me the value of dignity, patience, and perseverance. Those lessons shaped how I raised Marco, how I approach family, and how I set boundaries. Respect was never optional." Viviana listened intently, nodding occasionally, her eyes soft. "I see that now. I used to think your boundaries were harsh, but I realize now they were fair. And more than that, they were lessons. Lessons I needed to learn about respect, honesty, and patience." Her words touched me deeply. It was one thing for Marco to acknowledge his mistakes. It was another to hear Viviana articulate her awareness of her past behavior and express a desire to improve, not just for Marco, but for herself and for our family. We moved on to lighter topics, laughing over small family anecdotes and swapping cooking tips. Viviana even asked if I could teach her a few techniques for making pasta from scratch. I agreed, and we spent the next hour rolling dough, shaping noodles, and enjoying the process together. For the first time, it felt like we were collaborators, not adversaries. As I left their home later that afternoon, I reflected on how far we had come. The wedding debacle, which had once seemed like a humiliating ordeal, had become the turning point in our family dynamic. We had built a foundation of trust, respect, and authentic connection, something that could never have happened if I had silently accepted the old patterns. Over the next month, Marco and Viviana continued to show small but consistent acts of change. Marco asked for my advice on projects but never assumed compliance. Viviana included me in conversations about family plans but never treated me as a servant or an afterthought. They even began coordinating small outings and dinners without relying on me for logistical support, showing that they were internalizing the lessons I had insisted upon. One Friday, Marco called with excitement in his voice. "Mom, Viviana and I have some news. Can you come over tonight?" I felt a mix of curiosity and caution. "Of course, son. What's the news?" "You'll see," he replied mysteriously, his tone filled with anticipation. That evening, I arrived to find a beautifully decorated living room. Viviana handed me a small gift box. "Mom, we wanted to thank you for everything, for teaching us the importance of respect, for guiding us, and for showing us how to be a real family. This is a token of our appreciation." Inside the box was a delicate charm bracelet with tiny charms representing milestones in our family journey, a teacup for our afternoon tea, a book for my recipe project, a heart for the love that had grown between us. I was moved to tears. "Thank you, both of you. This means more to me than I can express," I said softly. Marco hugged me. "Mom, we've learned so much from you. Not just about family, but about dignity, love, and patience. We want to keep growing together, day by day." Viviana added, "I promise to continue earning your trust, not just for Marco, but because I genuinely want a strong, honest relationship with you." That night, as I drove home, I felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The lessons had been painful, the journey challenging, but the transformation was real. I realized that standing firm, asserting my dignity, and refusing to accept exploitation had reshaped our family into something healthier, more loving, and deeply respectful. I went to bed that night feeling a profound peace. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was growing, learning, and evolving. And for the first time in years, I felt truly seen, valued, and appreciated, not just for what I could do, but for who I was. The road ahead would have its challenges, but I knew that with continued honesty, patience, and mutual respect, we could navigate anything together. And that realization, more than any dinner, gift, or gesture, was the greatest gift of all. The following month, Marco and Viviana surprised me with an invitation I never expected. "Mom, we want you to come with us on a small weekend getaway," Marco said over the phone. "Just the three of us. No work, no chores, no expectations. We want to spend quality time as a family." I hesitated for a moment, cautious but intrigued. "A getaway? Where?" Viviana chimed in, her voice warm. "We booked a cozy cabin by the lake. It's simple, peaceful, and we just want to relax, cook together, and enjoy each other's company." After a brief pause, I agreed. "All right, I'll come, but only if it's truly for us to enjoy, not for me to run around handling everything." "Absolutely, Mom. This is for us all," Marco assured me. When I arrived at the cabin on Friday evening, I was struck by how thoughtfully everything had been arranged. The cabin was modest but inviting, with a fireplace, a stocked kitchen, and a small deck overlooking the water. Viviana and Marco had already set up a small bouquet of flowers on the dining table, a simple gesture that made me feel genuinely welcome. "Mom, we thought you might like this view," Marco said, guiding me to the deck. The lake shimmered under the setting sun, and the air was crisp and fresh. I inhaled deeply, feeling a rare sense of serenity. Over the weekend, we did everything together. We cooked meals as a team, took short hikes, and even played board games in the evenings. Marco and Viviana asked for my opinions, included me in every decision, and most importantly, never assumed I was responsible for organizing anything on my own. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace sipping tea, Viviana spoke softly. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about how I used to see you. I know I caused you a lot of hurt, and I want to say again how deeply sorry I am." I smiled gently. "Viviana, apologies are important, but I care more about the way you've chosen to change. Actions speak louder than words, and you've shown me every day that you're committed to building a healthy relationship. I want you to know," she continued, "that I'm also learning how to be a better mother, in advance. I don't want to make the same mistakes my parents made with me." Her honesty touched me deeply. That's all I ever wanted, to see mutual respect and genuine care, not just obedience or compliance. "You're doing wonderfully, Viviana." The next morning, Marco suggested we take a small boat out on the lake. As we paddled quietly, the gentle rocking of the boat and the calm water created a space for reflection. Marco looked at me, eyes sincere. "Mum, I know I've made mistakes in the past, but being here, spending this time with you and Viviana, I feel like we're finally becoming the family I always hoped we could be." I nodded. "Marco, the fact that you recognize the mistakes and actively choose to change, that's what matters. It shows maturity, love, and respect. Keep doing that, and you'll continue to grow as a husband and a son." Viviana reached across the boat and held my hand. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for standing your ground and teaching us what true family respect looks like." I squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for finally seeing it. Change isn't easy, but you've both made it possible." Later that evening, we prepared dinner together, laughing as we chopped vegetables and seasoned meat. For the first time, I felt equal, appreciated, and genuinely included, not as a servant, not as a fixer of everyone else's problems, but as a valued member of the family. After dinner, we settled by the fire, wrapped in blankets. Marco and Viviana shared stories from their childhoods, and I shared some of mine. Viviana asked detailed questions about my past, showing genuine curiosity, not just polite interest. I realized that through this effort, she was learning to love me not just as a mother, in law, but as a person. On the final morning, before packing up to leave, Viviana gave me a small notebook. "Mom, I started this to write down all the lessons you've taught me about respect, family, and life. I hope it will remind me to carry these lessons forward, no matter what happens." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Viviana, this is one of the most thoughtful gifts I've ever received. It will be cherished." As we drove home, I reflected on how far we had come. The wedding fiasco had once threatened to destroy our family relationships, but now it had become the catalyst for growth, respect, and connection. I realized that boundaries, when respected, had the power to transform not only relationships but entire family dynamics. That weekend marked a turning point. For the first time, I felt like a family member in the true sense. Not a task manager, not a surrogate nanny, not someone whose availability was assumed, but a respected, loved, and valued part of the family. As I stepped back into my home, I carried with me a renewed sense of hope. The lessons learned, the changes embraced, and the bonds strengthened all served as proof that with courage, patience, and honest communication, even the most strained family relationships could be rebuilt into something beautiful and lasting. From that day on, our family interactions became calmer, more considerate, and filled with genuine affection. The wedding ordeal, which once felt like a personal attack, had ultimately given me what I had always wanted: respect, connection, and the freedom to love without being taken for granted. And for the first time in decades, I felt fully empowered, not just in my role as a mother, but as a woman who had reclaimed her dignity and transformed her family. The months following the lake getaway continued to strengthen our bond. Marco and Viviana no longer assumed I was automatically available to handle household tasks or supervise the kids during family gatherings. Every invitation I received came with clarity. Would I like to participate, or would I rather decline? That simple act of asking made all the difference. One afternoon, I received a text from Viviana. "Mom, I'd love for you to come to my yoga class this weekend. It's just a beginner's session, nothing intense, and I thought it would be fun to do together." I smiled at the thought. She wasn't expecting me to instruct, fix, or manage anything, just to enjoy the moment. Saturday morning arrived, and I joined her at the small studio. As we unrolled our mats, Viviana's expression was open and relaxed. "Mom, I'm really glad you came," she said. "This feels like something we're doing together, just us." During the class, I noticed how different this was from our early interactions. There was no underlying tension, no unspoken expectations. Viviana laughed when she struggled with certain poses, and I laughed with her, not at her, but with her. After class, we went for a smoothie and walked along the nearby park trail, talking about everything from childhood memories to future plans. That evening, Marco called. "Mom, we're planning a small family barbecue next weekend. Would you like to come?" I paused, assessing the invitation. "Yes, I'd love to, as long as you don't expect me to handle everything." "Of course, Mom," he said, sincerity clear in his tone. "This time we're the hosts. You're our guest." At the barbecue, I was pleasantly surprised. Viviana had coordinated some games for the kids, Marco managed the grill, and I was only asked for input when they needed suggestions on plating or presentation. It was a small shift, but it reinforced a new dynamic, one of shared responsibility and mutual respect. One night, as I was preparing for bed, Viviana knocked softly on my door. She entered, holding a small box. "Mum, I wanted to give you something," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like a heart intertwined with a tree. "It's a symbol," she explained, "of growth and connection. The tree represents our family roots, and the heart represents love that grows when nurtured properly. I wanted you to have it." Tears welled in my eyes. "Viviana, this means more to me than you can imagine. Thank you for thinking of me in such a meaningful way." She smiled, a rare vulnerability in her eyes. "I've learned a lot about respect, Mom, but I've also learned about love, the kind that doesn't take but gives freely." In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle but consistent changes. Marco began consulting me about family decisions, not because he needed approval, but because he valued my perspective. Viviana invited me to her art classes, wanted my opinion on her new projects, and even sought my advice for work-related challenges. One afternoon, I found myself in the kitchen with Viviana, chopping vegetables for dinner. "Mom," she said thoughtfully, "do you remember when we first met? I was so defensive and stubborn, trying to keep you at a distance." I nodded. "Yes, I remember. It was a difficult time, but we both learned from it." She continued, voice soft but firm. "I want you to know I truly regret how I treated you. I see now that respect isn't just about politeness. It's about recognizing someone's value, their boundaries, and their heart, and I failed to do that before." I reached out and held her hand. "Viviana, your actions now show me that you've truly understood. That's all I ever wanted, to be seen, respected, and included." Over the next few months, we celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and small family milestones together. Each event felt different from the chaotic gatherings of the past. There were no hidden agendas, no assumptions, and no sense of obligation. Marco and Viviana had learned to plan, communicate, and respect my choices without hesitation. One evening, as I sat in my favorite chair reading, Marco came in. "Mom, I wanted to show you something," he said, handing me a scrapbook. Inside were photographs from our various gatherings, Notes from Viviana and mementos of small but meaningful moments. I wanted you to have this, Marco explained. It's a reminder of how far we've come and all the memories we've built together. Flipping through the pages, I felt a profound sense of pride and relief. The family I had once feared was fractured beyond repair had grown stronger, more considerate, and more loving than I could have imagined. As the year drew to a close, I realized that the lessons of that disastrous wedding, boundaries, respect, and communication, had reshaped not only my relationship with my daughter-in-law but with my entire family. For the first time, I felt a balance between giving and receiving, between loving and being loved, without compromising my dignity. And in that balance, I discovered a truth I had always known deep down: respect is the foundation of love, and when it's present, even the most challenging relationships can flourish. The months rolled into a full year, and the transformation in our family was undeniable. Marco and Viviana no longer assumed, demanded, or expected. Instead, they asked, included, and respected. It was astonishing how a simple shift in behavior had changed the atmosphere entirely. Family dinners were no longer obligations or tasks. They became moments of connection, laughter, and shared stories. One chilly Sunday morning, I received a text from Viviana. "Mom, would you like to come with me to volunteer at the community center this afternoon? They're organizing a children's reading program, and I thought it could be fun for us to do together." The thought of spending a day not as a nanny or an employee, but as a participant, made my heart lift. When we arrived, the children were excited, curious, and full of energy. Viviana led with confidence, and I followed, helping to guide a few reading activities. The difference between this and the wedding fiasco was staggering. Here, my presence was valued but not assumed. No one expected me to clean, chase, or manage beyond what was reasonable. For the first time in years, I felt like my time, effort, and limits were respected. Later that week, Marco invited me over with a simple text: "Mom, dinner at our place tomorrow. Just us three. No obligations, just family time." I smiled. The phrase, "no obligations," had become a beautiful indicator of change. When I arrived, Viviana greeted me with a warm hug. Marco poured me a glass of wine, and we sat together at the table. Dinner was light-hearted and flowing, filled with genuine conversation. Marco shared work stories. Viviana discussed a recent art project, and I told tales of my childhood, my grandmother's recipes, and my plans to finally start writing a book about our family traditions. Both listened intently, not as a formality, but out of true interest. After dessert, Viviana leaned back and said softly, "Mom, I've realized something important. You've always given so much, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. And for a long time, I couldn't see that. I mistook your kindness for obligation, and I'm sorry." I reached for her hand, feeling a surge of emotion. "Viviana, recognizing that now shows true growth. And I've seen your changes every day. You've learned to respect boundaries, to communicate, and to include without demanding. That's all a mother-in-law can ask for." Weeks later, Marco and Viviana planned a small weekend trip and invited me along. I hesitated initially, but Marco assured me, "No chores, Mom, just enjoy." That assurance alone was a testament to how far we'd come. At the cabin, we shared hikes, cooked together, and stayed up late talking. Viviana even asked for my advice on her art, not to control, but because she valued my perspective. One night, as we sat by the fireplace, Marco handed me a small, wrapped package. Inside was a journal. "Mom," he said, "we thought it would be nice for you to document your stories, recipes, and reflections. Something that's yours." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Marco, this is wonderful. Thank you. But it's more than a journal. It's a sign of trust, love, and acknowledgement." Viviana added, "Mom, you've taught us all an invaluable lesson. Standing up for yourself, asserting your boundaries, and expecting respect. Those are lessons we'll carry forward forever." By now, I realized the wedding incident, painful as it was, had become the turning point for our family. What seemed like a confrontation, a crisis, or even betrayal had led to transformation, understanding, and mutual respect. Every day, I witnessed how a relationship could be rebuilt not through forced gestures, but through consistent actions that honored dignity and boundaries. As the year drew to a close, I sat down to finally write my book, tentatively titled Cooking with Love, serving with dignity recipes and reflections from a modern grandmother. It wasn't just a cookbook. It was a guide to balancing love, respect, and self-worth within a family. I included anecdotes, reflections, and the story of the wedding incident, not to dwell on pain, but to illuminate the lessons learned. When the book launched, Marco and Viviana hosted a small gathering. Friends and family came, and the energy was warm, respectful, and joyous. During the event, I shared my reflections aloud. This book is about more than recipes, I told them. It's about understanding that love without respect can become an obligation, and respect without love can feel cold. Only when both exist together can a family truly thrive. After the reading, Viviana approached me, eyes glistening. "Mom Antella," she whispered, "thank you for teaching us respect, for allowing us to learn from our mistakes, and for showing that love and dignity can coexist." I hugged her tightly, thinking back to the day I overheard them planning to use me as a nanny for 15 kids at the wedding. Who could have imagined that one difficult moment could catalyze such profound change? Our family was no longer fractured by assumptions, misuse, or disrespect. We had found balance, love, and genuine connection. And as I looked around at Marco, Viviana, and the growing circle of friends and family celebrating that night, I knew one truth with clarity: standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Boundaries aren't barriers, they are bridges to deeper understanding. And love, when paired with respect, can heal, transform, and flourish beyond even the darkest moments. I was finally free to love, live, and lead my family with dignity intact. And in doing so, I discovered that the strongest bonds aren't those built on convenience, but on mutual care, understanding, and respect.